Hey, how about it, race fans? Richard Allen of motorsportsreport.net coming at you with one of my Rich's Ramblings. This one we can label as the post-SpeedWeeks Rich's Ramblings because we're going to talk about what we learned out of SpeedWeeks from these past several weeks that it's been going on down in Georgia and Florida with the dirt late model competitors on the track. Most of the nights there's a lot of racing going on. I know I watched and wrote up an awful lot of races on motorsportsreport.net, so I hope you check those out and also picked up some other stories as well. But let's get right into it. What did we learn out of these past days and weeks at places like Volusia Speedway Park and Ocala Speedway, Golden Isle Speedway, all the places where we saw racing take place? And one of the things that I picked up right away, and if it's any indication as to health of the dirt late model sport, it seems to be like we must be in a pretty healthy state, because there were very solid car counts at most of the races. You had full fields. As a matter of fact, several of the races had more than 50 cars that entered, as well as, and almost all of them had at least well into the 30s. So there were plenty of cars on hand that were there for the races. So I felt like that was a good sign for the season yet to come. And also the two series, the World of Outlaws Late Model Series and the Lucas Oil Late Model Dirt Series, have a solid group that are committed to run their tours through the year. Of course, now we'll see how many of those actually stay on and how many drop off as the time goes by. As we now finish up Speed Weeks, we talk about how there's really no off season in dirt late model racing, and to a large extent that's true. Because you got the races all the way up through the World Finals and Gateway in the Dome and all that stuff that take place very late in the year. Then we just turn right back around in January and head back to Georgia and Florida. But this period we're about to enter right now kind of is an off season in a sense. Everybody's now run a few races, and now it's time to go back to the shop and either improve on what you're already good at or try and fix whatever you weren't good at. Coming out of Florida here these past few weeks. So what did we learn? Well, this is what I've picked up. There is a growing divide between the top teams and the mid-tier teams and the lower tier teams, and the divide is getting more and more pronounced every year, and that now almost on a week-to-week basis. I'm a regular voter on the Dirt on Dirt Top 25 poll that they run out, and it was pretty easy when I was submitting my votes this week, and I won't tell you exactly how I voted, but it was pretty easy to pick the top five. I mean, there were five that just stood out, drivers and teams that stood out, and in no particular order: Jonathan Davenport, Devin Moran, Ricky Thornton Jr., Bobby Pierce, and Garrett Alberson, to me, were clearly the best drivers and teams to come out of Georgia and Florida here over the past month or so. Each of those won multiple races, where it seemed to always be in contention. If we kind of take them one by one, Devin Moran, for example, Moran was just consistently fast. He was always way up there in qualifying, running well in heat races. Even the features that he didn't win, he was right there more often than not, it seems like. And you can really say the same thing for Jonathan Davenport, especially as the Speed Weeks went on. Davenport seemed to get stronger and stronger throughout that time. Thornton was interesting in that when he finished races, he typically won them. But there were some issues, jumping the cushion here and there, getting tangled up with some slower cars, stuff like that seemed to happen to him on more than one occasion that held him back. He probably could have won 2-3 other races had some of those circumstances not bitten him during the time. So Thornton, obviously very strong. Garrett Alberson picked up a couple of really nice wins. He's sort of living up to that potential that everybody's known has been there, and we see glimpses of it over the past couple of seasons. But now I think we're really starting to see it. He picked up a win out at Vado Speedway Park in the Wild West Shootout, and then he got a couple of wins at Volusia here during Georgia-Florida Speed Week. So I feel like if there's going to be a breakout season by somebody who hasn't previously had a breakout season, I think it very well could be Garrett Albertson. And then also I included in that top 5 that I say is separated from everybody else. I put Bobby Pierce in there. Pierce did not win down in Georgia or Florida during this time, but he was so strong out at Vado. He won, 4 out of the 5 features, I believe, out at Vado Speedway Park in the Wild West Shootout. And you know that once everything gets going on a week-to-week basis, you know that Bobby Pierce and the number 32 team are going to be up there contending for wins on pretty much a weekly basis with the World of Outlaws and then whatever other races he chooses to use. So to me, those 5 stood out well above the rest. They're almost head and shoulders above the mid-tier. And that's not to say that some of these mid-tier teams and some of these drivers can't step up, because we know that they very well could. Like, for example, take the 2 house car operations. You know, Brandon Overton in the Longhorn factory car, factory team car. I mean, you know the potential's there. They're all the resources that they need. And, of course, Overton has shown over and over again throughout his career that he's got the talent to win a lot of races. So there's no question about that. It's just a matter of putting it together. You know, there were several times during Speed Weeks where he would be very fast early, he'd qualify really well, maybe heat race real well, and somehow that just didn't translate to the feature, or maybe the other way around. He didn't qualify or heat race as well as he would have liked, but then moved up during the feature. It's just a matter of that team starting to gel and everything coming together so that they can put full nights together, and we know that's coming. That's almost certainly going to happen. And then the other house car operation, the Rocket House car with Brandon Sheppard, they just didn't seem to be in the mix very often throughout Speed Weeks. I think, you know, because the way things played out last year, you know, a year ago at this time, they looked like the world beaters at Hudson O'Neal. They won several Speed Weeks races with him, and then all of a sudden, you know, everything just kind of fell apart after that. You know, O'Neal left. You know, they brought in Tim McCready. That seemed like it took some time to gel with them, although they did go on and win the Topless 100 and ran well toward the end of the season. Now they brought Brandon Sheppard back, and I think everybody thought, you know, multiple-time champion with the World of Outlaws, all-time winning driver, World of Outlaws, who won all these big races. He'll just jump right back in the seat and just go right to the front. It just can't happen that way nowadays. The technology on these things changes almost on a weekly basis. And when you're out of one seat and into another, it's hard to make those adjustments and have it just come just like that, you know, have it be an immediate impact. I feel like these few weeks here, but until the next set of races that they'll be in, I think that Mark Richards and his team will have a significant upswing from the next time around. They'll have a chance to kind of get their feet on the ground and sort of, you know, steady themselves. And I believe that will be the case. And speaking of you moving from ride to ride, I mentioned Hudson O'Neal there a little while ago. Hudson, they really struggled. I mean, he did win that hunt to front race at Needmore during Speed Weeks, but the rest of the time it was a struggle. I mean, a lot of times, you know, at the back of heat races or getting in through B mains, that kind of stuff, you know, having difficulties in the feature. So they struggled as well. A couple of guys who I feel like did you know, maybe even exceed expectations. Max Blair has really, you know, entrenched himself in the national touring scene over the last couple of years, and that really showed during Speed Weeks. He was just steady and consistent all the time throughout all those races. And another guy, Tyler Erb, you know, Tyler can be inconsistent from time to time, but he ran very well out of Vado, and he had some really nice runs during Speed Weeks. So he's another guy who, you know, just find that consistency. You know, Max Blair has plenty of consistency. Tyler Erb needs to maybe find just a little bit more. But those two guys could be in the mix a lot. And then, of course, you had another couple of guys who picked up wins, Ryan Gustin and Tyler Bruning. Gustin won World of Outlaws race, and Bruning won a Golden Isles with the Locust Oil series. But both those guys just kind of failed to carry that momentum a little further. So now we'll see during this little off period, will they be able to refine that momentum and carry it further? But like I said, right now, there's 5 teams that are well ahead of everybody else. So right now, if you're not Devin Moran, Jonathan Davenport, Ricky Thornton Jr., Garrett Albertson, or Bobby Pierce, you're chasing. And those guys aren't just going to sit still. Those guys, those teams, and those guys are just too good. So now it's up to the Overtons. And one thing I failed to mention, Cody Overton. Cody Overton showed some real promise during these past couple of weeks as well. So, but Shepard, Overton, both Overtons, Max Blair, Tyler Erb, Hudson O'Neal, those guys, they are on the cusp. They're there, but it's a matter of carrying it that step further, because we know those top 5, they aren't backing down. They're back in their shop right now, working to get better on a daily basis, and when they come, they'll be even better than they were before. So those who are trailing them going to have to even step it up that much further. But anyway, those are my thoughts from Speed Weeks. We'll have some other stuff coming up. I'm going to write something about there's some scheduling issues that are bound to come up because you got a lot of races, 2 different series. Well, even when you count the regional tours, you got multiple series, and the tracks are dwindling. The loss of East Bay really showed itself too. So we'll see maybe where we're going here in 2026, what might happen with Speed Weeks later on. But overall, I felt like 2025's version of Speed Weeks was very entertaining. There was some really good racing. There were a lot of good things that came out of it. So now we'll just look and see what happens in the rest of 2025. But until later, this is Richard Allen of motorsportsreport.net with Rich's Ramblings, and I will see you at the track.